So you are doing a master's program, you are doing a PhD program, and at the same time, you're a worker, you work for an organization. At the same time, you're a married person, you have children. All these are domains of your life that require your attention. But your priority is to have a very good postgraduate education. There are demands associated with education. Like someone said, you have to review literature. And PhD studies is not a joke. And French studies is not a joke. And so most at times, you may experience some stresses. You may experience fatigue. And when these psychological experiences overwhelm you, then you find yourself in a situation that we call burnout. When we talk about stress in psychology, we are simply saying that you are confronted with demands and you are supposed to be able to overcome those demands. Your failure to overcome those demands will create some kind of situation for you, one of them being depression, and then ultimately burnout. And once you experience burnout, it tends to incapacitate you in the sense that it affects the extent to which you function properly in terms of your academic work assignments. You keep on procrastinating, you start having sleep problems. And so to the extent that your daily functions are affected, and then we can say that something definitely is wrong with you. Then we want to do some assessment to find out whether indeed it is just stress, it is anxiety, it is depression, or we can call it burnout. All right, okay, there's no way. Okay, good. So when we say someone is burnt out or has experienced burnout, as I said earlier, some graduate students take to drinking. Some graduate students take to drug abuse and all kinds of things because they are unable to manage the demands associated with graduate level studies. And so you see them, they're emotionally exhausted. They experience what we call depersonalization, which I'll explain in a moment. And then they feel a sense of not being able to accomplish what they wanted to achieve. So you started this graduate studies with high hopes. I want to become this, I want to become that. But because you're unable to overcome some of the challenges associated with graduate studies, you start thinking that, look, it doesn't look like I'll be able to achieve these targets, these goals that I've set for myself as far as graduate studies is concerned. So we are talking about emotional exhaustion, you feeling emotionally exhausted. What does that mean from a burnout perspective? Someone is drained both physically and emotionally. And that has happened because you are unable to deal with the daily academic activities. I remember when I was doing my PhD in Australia, one of my seniors went to meet her principal supervisor with her chapter 4. And so when she returned from that meeting, she started crying. And I inquired, what is the problem, Fabiola? Then Fabiola said, my supervisor says my work looks like dog breakfast. That my work looks like dog breakfast. Now the only way, she could handle that was to cry. It was a bad message conveyed to her by the supervisor. But you must also understand that graduate studies require some standards. If you are not able to meet that standard, over a period of time, your supervisor himself or herself becomes frustrated. And so it will come in the form of negative communication. Your work looks like dog breakfast. And so that was a big blow to this lady. But at the end of the day, you still have to do research work that will be approved by your university. Otherwise, you have to abandon the program. And so people in a state of emotional exhaustion, do not have that emotional control, do not have the resources to enable them to maintain a balance when it comes to their emotions. They can yell at people because of that frustration. They can abuse others, which we sometimes call displacement of anger. And once you're also emotionally exhausted, it becomes difficult for you to concentrate. Then again, a burnout person experiences what we call depersonalization. Now, there should be a strong link or connection between you, the student, and your activities. A very strong connection between you, the student, and your studies or your activities. You enroll on a program that you are passionate about. You enroll on a program that is supposed, to help you pursue a certain career. So that connection is very important. But because of the stress that you experience on daily basis in your attempt to execute or perform tasks associated with your academic work, it gets to a point where you experience what we call disengagement. That connection is broken. You may start questioning yourself. Am I on the right path? Have I chosen the right course? Or maybe have I chosen the right topics? Someone mentioned literature review, right? Sometimes students get to a point in their dissertation journey and then they are wondering whether they are doing the right work. Right? You get to that point where you wonder whether you have chosen the right topics. Simply because you are starting to review literature. Simply because you are starting to put yourself, in the work properly. And so you start lamenting. You start thinking that your professor or your supervisor is the reason why you are not making progress. That's what we call depersonalization. And once you find yourself in that situation, the passion that initially you had for this program, gets lost. And then finally, reduce personal accomplishment. We all have targets, we all have reasons why we enroll on programs. Even the work that we do, there's a reason we are doing it. But when you become overwhelmed along the journey, you get frustrated. You now start thinking whether you'll be able to achieve the target that you set for yourself. Just imagine that your supervisor constantly rejects chapters that you submit. It becomes a very big blow. You start doubting yourself, your ability to succeed and do some of these things well. And once you drum home those messages psychologically, that sense of feeling that you are being defeated, captures your psyche. It captures your psyche. Sometimes you start blaming yourself. I'm not good enough. Those negative talks further sink you into that state of burnout, which may manifest in poor sleep quality, which may manifest in fatigue, which may manifest in exhaustion, etc., etc. Some of you probably are not able to get very good sleep because you are thinking about the rejections. The several times you have worked on chapters and get your supervisor, or your supervisors have rejected your chapters. So you go to bed, you are unable to sleep. You tell friends that, look, I do not think I'll be able to complete this program because the way things are going. It is an indication that you have reached a point in your life where maybe you have to pause and do some assessment and find a way out. And as a matter of fact, I'll tell you that every graduate student, walk through this journey, but it depends on the strategies that you adopt or you deploy. As I'm speaking to you, I went through that journey during my MPhil at the University of Ghana. I went through that journey during my PhD in Australia. You'll be told boldly that, look, it is normal, it is a normal part of it. If you are unable to mobilize resources, both personal and non-personal resources, to deal with the demands that come with postgraduate studies, you may find yourself in a crisis situation. In fact, there are evidence of people even committing suicide in Australia because they could not just handle, the stresses associated with graduate studies. So, as I said, burnout can happen to anyone. Even as a lecturer, I experience some high levels of stress. The workloads on me is a major cause of that. So if I don't deploy very good strategies, I'll sink into burnout. The number of students you have to supervise every academic year, undergraduate, masters, and PhD, the teaching load, all these are major causes or drivers of burnout. And so we should understand that everybody can be a victim of burnout. But most importantly, with respect to our discussion today, students in our various universities, and particularly at graduate level, in our universities in Ghana, there's virtually no scholarship. And so most of our graduate students have to pay their own school fees. They have to work to be able to raise money to pay their own school fees. They have to study. And so that places a high level of pressure or stress on them. And at the same time, whilst you are paying these school fees, you have to also satisfy the requirements of your program. That is by passing your examination, by doing all assignments and getting them submitted, on time. And so research findings clearly tells us that burnout is common among professionals, among students. And so I have some statistics to buttress that. Some studies show that about 70% of the sample, experience stresses that interfere with their daily functioning. Stress is a normal part of life. Without stress, we can't do anything. But stress becomes, counterproductive. Stress becomes a problem to the extent that it affects your ability to function, your ability to flourish, your ability to thrive. Then that means that there's a problem. And so that is what we are talking about. Stresses that interfere with our daily functioning. When you see some of those things happening, you are not able to do your homework, you are not able to submit your assignments on time, then that means there's a problem. You are being overwhelmed. The signs are becoming clearer and clearer. And then another study showed that compared to undergraduate and the general population, graduate students like yourselves, PhD, Masters, MBA, MPhil students, you present high levels of stress. The amount of cognitive energy you need to process information to meet standards of graduate studies is so high. And so to that extent, the research findings are too loud in that regard, that our graduate students constantly manifest high level of stress. What are the consequences of burnout? As you may well be aware, academic performance is one of the outcomes associated with burnout. And unfortunately, burnout tends to hinder our ability to perform very well academically. We mentioned the dimensions of burnout, that you become emotionally exhausted. You experience what we call depersonalization. And then there's that reduced sense of personal accomplishment. And so can you imagine that you find yourself in such a situation? How do you perform well? How do you concentrate? How do you organize your life? How do you engage meaningfully in group discussion? How do you do proper literature review to meet the standards required? And so certainly the reflection will be that there will be poor academic performance. Physical health, sleep-related challenges. In fact, sometimes I wonder whether I'm not even experiencing burnout, because sometimes myself, I'm unable to sleep. And I tell my wife that if I sleep in the afternoon, I struggle to sleep in the night. And I wonder why. Okay, and so because of that, I can perfectly say that I experience sleep disturbances. Even if I were to sleep 10 minutes in the afternoon, I struggle to sleep in the night, which is not good. And this is all because of the demands on me in terms of work, student long essays, thesis, dissertations, and then marking of examination scripts alongside consultancy work. And so that has the potential to affect your physical health. So sometimes you see someone with a big stomach and you think the person is rich. Because of stresses associated with work, it affects digestion. And so you look bloated. And some may think that you are looking good, but you are really going through, some physical health-related challenges. It weakens your immune system. Another consequence of burnout is mental health. Some people are experiencing anxiety, depression, and we can even add stress to it. And when we mention this, we are simply trying to say that look, the student is going through some crises which are psychological in nature, in the sense that the psychological resources are unable to satisfy the demands, that come with academic work. And a simple example is a literature review challenge raised by one of your colleagues. That his greatest challenge is how to review literature. And this may sound a bit weird, or you may think, oh, this is weird. It's easy to review literature. You've done research methods, they've taken you through the steps in reviewing literature. How come it is still a problem for a PhD student? In fact, it is even still a problem for lecturers, people who have PhD. And then we also have the social life. We do not live in a vacuum. Even if you are not married as a graduate student, at least you have colleagues. Once your study is hitting the rock, once you think that you are not living up to standard, you tend to withdraw. The extent to which you engage others, even have a drink out, take a walk with colleagues becomes limited. You want to always be with yourself, reflect on certain things. So that is how bad burnout can be. And then future success. You have started these programs with high hopes. Some of you, not necessarily that you want to become academics, but after this PhD or master's program, it will further boost your career. You may want to become a top consultant. Yet, it appears that this PhD, you may not get it. Okay? So what are the implications in terms of personal development? I met a director in a big public sector institution who is doing PhD. And then I wanted to know why he enrolled on the PhD program. Someone who has just 2 years to go on retirement. And then he said, look, I made a very big contract, well-bound contract, because the requirement is a PhD. And so that is the reason why he's enrolled on the PhD program. And yet you could see that this is someone who cannot go through the rigorous demands, that PhD require. Such a person cannot do proper review of literature, but there's a goal in mind. I want to be able to get well-bound contract. I want to be able to set up a big consultancy firm and attract some of these contracts. And so some of the challenges in terms of, your inability to meet the requirements of graduate studies will make you to start thinking. The third dimension of burnout, reduce personal sense of accomplishment. That look, I may not be able to get this degree. I may not be able to get this degree. What might cause all these things? If you experience burnout, what might be the problem? We can categorize the causes of burnout into three: individual factors, organizational factors, social and external factors. Anytime I teach research methods or manuscript writing, the first advice I give to students, graduate students, is the fact that do not allow yourself to be consumed by the syndrome of perfectionism. Some people tend to have that problem, that look, I must make sure my first paragraph is excellent before I can move to the next paragraph. If you are that type of person, you are placing a huge burden on yourself. There is nothing like a perfect writer. And so on the basis of that, we must demonstrate the highest form of humility and appreciate the fact that any feedback that you receive from your supervisor or from a reviewer, negative or positive, that feedback should be received with the highest form of humility. You must understand that you are learning. So that is one important personality factor that can lead us to the experience of burnout. Because with the same perfectionism syndrome, you always attack your supervisor, your professor, for giving you some comments, some suggestions to work on, just to improve upon, your dissertation, just to improve upon your personal development. Organizational factors, and by organizational factors, we are looking at it in the context of education. So workload, academic workload, series of assignments in a week, all the lectures you attended in a week, all the lecturers gave you assignments with strict deadlines. Okay, so if you don't map up a good strategy, this workload may sink you into depression, may create a very bad situation for you to the extent that you'll not be able to submit your homework or assignments on time. Then the social, we can talk about financial stress. Money. Money is a big deal. money is powerful. I indicated earlier that most of you are working at the same time doing your postgraduate studies. Why? In an ideal situation, you should do a postgraduate study without working. So you call yourself a full-time student. But you need money to be able to pay your school fees. You need money to handle some personal effects. And so to the extent that you do not have, financial resources to buy books, to feed yourself well, to get a good accommodation, then that might be the reason why you'll not be able to even meet some of your deadlines and gradually you sink into what we call burnout. Because once you're not able to meet the requirements in terms of deadlines, your grades will start dropping. They will start becoming bad. So I've provided some detailed information on some factors, individual, organizational, and then social and external factors. So I mentioned the perfectionism, which is personality in nature. Coping strategies. Some people tend to adopt maladaptive coping strategies when they encounter stress. They abuse drugs, they abuse alcohol. When they hit the wall. Some take to humanizing and all kinds of funny things because they have encountered a challenge in their postgraduate journey. If I was doing my PhD in Australia, I took to drinking at some point. Okay? But that was not, in my case, it was not necessarily as a result of the fact that I was not doing well. But it got to a point where I felt lonely. I felt lonely. I was so aggressive. I wanted to get things done quickly. It got to a point, one day I went to meet my supervisor, and then he gave me a movie ticket. Now, look, take this ticket and go and watch it. There's this nice movie. That was the time Black Panther was, released. I said, look, go and watch Black Panther. It's a nice movie. Okay, so that experience really taught me that it gets to a point in your graduate study journey where you need to relax, take things easy. Because it's one way by which you can bring your creativity back. Just go to the movies. We'll discuss some of these things and the strategies. Go to the movies, watch some movies, go and sit somewhere, chat with people. That is a more positive, a more progressive way to cope with challenges that we encounter, when we are doing our postgraduate studies. It is better than maladaptive strategies like, abusing drugs. Some take to smoking, even though they don't smoke. Some take to alcohol. Some take to humanizing. And so these are some of the individual factors that can really cause burnout. Organizational factors, workload, which we have explained somehow. The studies are time bound. You don't do PhD or MPhil or Masters forever. PhD at the University of Ghana is 4 years. In other universities, it's 3 years. And so you must ensure that within that 3 or 4 years, you are done your program. If it is Masters, 2 years. If it is MSc, 1 year in some universities. Okay? And within that time frame, you are expected to meet the requirements for graduation. So assignments, examination, other extracurricular commitments, all these are expected of you, the student. In Australia, where I did my PhD, as part of the requirements for graduation, you have to do a presentation in an international conference. So it doesn't matter that your PhD thesis has passed, but you must compulsorily do a presentation, 2 presentations in an international conference. So it is part of the workload. It is part of the workload. And so your inability to deal with, the tasks associated with graduate studies will put you in that situation that we call burnout. Because once you are unable to do that, it can affect your emotions. You feel sad, you feel bad about yourself. You start thinking that beautiful dream that you had when you enrolled on this program is likely, or it's most likely that you'll not be able to realize that. Job control. And because you are graduate students, I'll tell you this. One of the challenges most graduate students face, and it turns out that those challenges become their biggest headache, is their dissertation topics. Do you have that level of autonomy to choose your topic? Because ultimately it's about you, it's about your future career, it's about your personal development. And the topic that you work on is a crucial part of that personal development. And so to the extent that you do not have that autonomy, to choose subjects, to choose topics for your dissertation, it becomes a problem. When it comes to enrollment on the program, you choose the program that you want to pursue. Like Joseph said, I did organizational psychology at the PhD level. So someone is doing PhD in public administration. And I want to believe that you chose that course based on your future career, what you want to become in future, or what you want to do with that PhD. The kind of competencies, expertise that you would develop by doing a PhD program in public administration. And so to that extent, you have that control in terms of choosing the program. But the other level is the topic that you work on for your dissertation. If that topic is imposed on you, you may encounter challenges along the way. And your failure to deal with those challenges will put you in a state of helplessness. And then the academic environment. I keep telling my students at the MPhil and PhD level that honestly, we have not created the ideal environment for most of our students. One of the greatest challenges most postgraduate students face in our part of the world, maybe now it's a bit better in some of the universities, particularly the University of Ghana, is resources, articles that will help you to review your literature, that will help you to really know the contemporary issues that are being discussed, that are being researched on in your chosen area. So are those resources available? Do students have good environment, study places to go and study? The ambience, where they feel comfortable to engage. So to the extent that a supportive academic environment is not created, if you have a challenge, whom can you contact in your department, in the entire university? Whom can you contact? So if we have those resources available, then it will help these students to overcome some of the academic challenges that they encounter on a daily basis. Social and external factors. social and external factors. You have friends, you have family, you have other relatives, and even in the academic environment, your lecturers and your peers, all those come together to provide a certain support architecture, that can either help you to manage to prevent the occurrence of burnout, or you find yourself in a situation where you are denied of these resources, and so you are left alone, and that can put you in that crisis. And then the same people constitute a source of pressure, expectation. Your wife expects a lot from you. Your husband expects a lot from you from this study that you are doing. Your lecturers expect a lot from you. Your friends expect a lot from you. And so because of that, that feeds into your psyche. And then you think that you must not disappoint, these people. They form part of your social convoy. And so they have placed a huge expectation on you. Oh, my brother is doing a PhD. I see him becoming a big person. My sister is doing a PhD. I see her becoming a big person. Okay, sister, we are all counting on you. Brother, we are all counting on you. All these are pressures that are being put on you. And so to that extent, you feel that failure is not an option. You are afraid that you disappoint them. And all those things will create some negative emotions or generate some negative emotions in you. And that can really be a major hindrance to your progress. Then financial support, as I said earlier, money is a big deal. I went to do my PhD on scholarship. But because I have a family, wife and children, the allowance or the stipends I was receiving from the scholarship board was not sufficient. Children's school fees had to be paid. And in fact, I started my PhD at the time that my wife was doing her first degree. And so I had to pay the children's school fees, I had to pay my wife's school fees, ensure that at least they get food to eat on a daily basis. That was also part of my responsibility. And so it got to a point where financially I was handicapped. I started this PhD with the intention that I will not do any work. I'll focus strictly on my studies. But because of financial challenges, I had to do some cleaning jobs, to be able to handle the financial aspect of, my life. And so the moment you start doing some part-time job, what it means is that the time that you were supposed to allocate fully to your academic work, you have to share that. And that is what most of you probably will be encountering, or I encounter, because you are combining work as an executive in your organization, as a manager in your organization, with academic work. You cannot afford to say that, no, I have to resign, and then finish with my studies before and go back. You cannot afford to do that. You do not have the opportunity to take study leave with pay. So what do? You have to combine that, all because of financial reasons. So we have looked at the concept of burnout. We have looked at the dimensions or elements of burnout. We have looked at the consequences. We have discussed the causes of burnout. Individual factors, organizational, factors, social and external factors. We also indicated that no one is immune from burnout. No one is free from burnout. So if that is the case, how do we prevent it? One of the suggestions is that we should take regular exercise seriously. It has the potential to replenish our human physiology. It has that magical role to play when it comes to getting you feel relaxed, getting your body back to a state of equilibrium, regular exercise. And so when we say regular, is that you have to choose the right exercise. And then there are people in these gyms that can advise you on the kind of exercise that you need to do on a daily basis, so that you remain productive and free yourself from so much stress. Then social connection. Social connection. We always say that the human being is social in nature. So that need for belongingness is very critical. If you feel ostracized, you feel lonely in this journey, then you're placing a huge burden on yourself because you need to talk to someone. Someone needs to hear your story. Someone needs to advise you on what to do. Someone can offer some help. Someone can offer some guidance. So your peers are the first point of call. And here I will share a personal example with you. Before I started my MPhil at the University of Ghana Psychology Department, the stories that we heard about the number of years a student had to take to do MPhil was a very sad one. A program that is supposed to be executed within 2 years, students were using averagely 4 years to do MPhil. And so when some of us enrolled, we had a head of department at that time who advised us to really work seriously at finishing the program within the 2 years as stipulated. And so what did we do? We thought that the best way to do this is to work as a team. And so we're our brother's keeper. So this one is very good at statistics, this one is very good at literature review, this one is good at that. And so we knew where to go to when you need a particular help. And that created a very productive team environment for us. And thankfully, our batch, most of us were able to graduate within record time. Most of us finished our thesis even before the deadline for submission. And so we ended up setting a very good record, bringing back the old days when it was possible for one to do MPhil within 2 years and complete. Before we went, it was characterized by extensions. So social connection is very important. Then healthy eating. What you eat matters because it has a strong link with your health and your psychological state. Some people take meals that cause them to sleep. That makes the brain dull. You want to study, and then you take something that will make you feel weak. That will make you feel it affects your emotions. You virtually feel like the appetite, the motivation to read is not there. So what you eat really matters. So healthy eating is very important. Healthy eating is very important. The time you eat is very important. Are you in a situation where you have set unrealistic targets? We have to be very real. And again, it is something that most of our graduate students do not do, particularly those who are combining work with graduate studies. The truth of the matter is that you are doing two demanding things at the same time. Yet you are doing a full-time postgraduate program, master's or PhD, full-time. And yet you don't have that full-time. At the same time, you want to finish within the 4 years, allocated for that program. In that case, you are not being realistic. Okay? So if you appreciate the fact that you are combining two demanding tasks, work and graduate studies, then you should be able to set targets that are realistic, that reflect your current situation. What kind of resources will you need? Study groups, workshops. So you should be 2-3 steps ahead of your colleagues on the same program who are doing full-time postgraduate studies. Otherwise, your target will be unrealistic. Then self-talk. And by self-talk, we mean you should be very positive in encouraging yourself, but this must also be very realistic. They think you can't do it, and then you are encouraging yourself. That is not, it will not have any effect. It will not have any positive effect. So these are well integrated points. If you set realistic targets, it means that it will inform the kind of resources that you need to be able to realize these targets. And so if the right resources are also deployed, then you'll be able to engage in this positive self-talk. Then you'll realize the benefits of this positive self-talk. Me, I'm very optimistic. Anything I'm doing now, I back it with that positive expectation. Because before I get to that level where I'm positive about what I'm doing, I would have assembled all the resources. I would have analyzed the situation properly and know what I need to be able to execute, the task. And so when I get to a point where things are challenging, I expected that. Okay, and I'll be able to navigate around it. And adequate sleep. Are you able to sleep well? Do you sleep on time? Sleep is an important, element that puts us in a state of homeostasis. It's a big technical. I'm sure some of you have heard of that before. Homeostasis. It puts you in a state of equilibrium where there's proper flow and regulation of the body. It puts you in a state of equilibrium. When you have good sleep, adequate sleep, you wake up feeling refreshed with renewed sense of enthusiasm and energy, ready for the next day's work. And then seek support. You have course advisors. You have graduate school coordinators. The graduate school is there, counseling center is there. Do you even know where the counseling center is? So you must be able to seek support when you need one. And so when you do all these things, it helps you to prevent burnout from happening, or it prevents you from experiencing burnout. So thank you so much, class. I want to say something. I await your questions, your contributions, and then I'm happy to hear you share your personal experiences with me, experiences that you are encountering now as graduate students. So now the floor is yours.
So I think you can raise your hand if you have a question. You can raise your hand, or you can also type it in the chat box.
Yeah, Abigail.
Hi, Doc. Thanks so much for this presentation. It's been very helpful. However, as you were talking, I was just thinking about how realistic um doing some of the strategies you mentioned in preventing burnout are, because this is the case where you have so many courseworks you have to do, and definitely that's going to affect your sleep, and you don't even have time for social interactions because you have a lot of work.
Yeah.
So I'm just thinking, I mean, how do we navigate that? And then I find myself in a situation where I am in a new environment, which is also adding to my stresses because I have to adapt to suit the way the teaching and learning method here. So I would also want your suggestions on how to go about that, and how to help reduce my stress.
Okay. Should we take the next one as answer? Okay, so Abigail, thank you for your question. It's a very good question. Now, when we talk about strategies for preventing burnout, we have, in fact, what I even discuss are just few. But what we always encourage and advise students or individuals to do is that pick the one that you can do. So if there is exercise, some kind of exercise that you can do, start doing those exercises. It is not like all size fit all situation. Okay. And I like the fact that you mentioned that you're in a new environment and then you have to adapt. Being very realistic about the situation you find yourself in is very, very important. You don't have to engage in any form of denial. Now, this is the situation you find yourself in a new work environment. You need to adapt. At the same time, you have to make sure that you do your academic work. How do you combine the two and achieve expected results? So when you put all of these demands in one basket or in one bowl, then you now have to start thinking about how do I navigate? Okay, at the same time, you know, deploy some strategies that will ensure that I remain healthy, strong, and motivated to perform these tasks. If you are not able to do that, come to that reality check. Then you keep on saying, oh, it is not realistic, or I cannot do this, I cannot do exercise, I cannot. At least you can eat a healthy meal. That may be your option. I need to eat a healthy meal, I need to eat on time. And particularly for you mothers or married couples, when you get home, there are some responsibilities that you have to perform. The woman, you have to make sure your children are prepared for bed. You wake up the next morning, you have to make sure they are prepared for school. And so all these are things that you have to list and appreciate that they are an important part of you. So now what is the way out? I want to be able to carry out all these tasks and still remain healthy, still remain strong. Because take note that if you sink into burnout, it will affect the performance of all these activities. So you want to find yourself in a situation where you'll be able to do all these things and still remain, strong, functional, etc., etc. And so you just pick from the strategies and start gradually. It is like trying to swallow a bitter pill. Taking the first step may be very challenging, yet you have to do that. I used to go to gym. Okay, I signed on to gym because of the nature of my work. And then I started off by saying that look, I always come to the gym 3 times a week. It got to the point it reduced to once a week because I get to the work, I get home, and then they have closed. And then in the mornings too, I have to come to school for lectures, sometimes early in the morning. So I'm unable to go to the gym in the morning. In the evening, you get home, they have closed. And so what do I have to do? I have to start a different regime. Now I can't go to gym. I have to do some walking. At least if I get home, gym has closed, I can do some 30 minutes walk. You know, that way it helps me to keep myself fit. And so that is how you have to look at it in terms of trying to prevent burnout. Reality check, number one. What is my situation? These are the responsibilities that I have to perform every day. How do I continue to perform these responsibilities or tasks and still remain healthy, remain productive? That is where you deploy some strategies. If you fail to do that, it will get to a point where you realize that the going has become very tough. And then the problems will start showing up. Okay, so that is my take on Abigail, your question. And just to emphasize again, do not engage in any form of denial. Be very realistic about your situation. And then apply some of these strategies to the extent that it is feasible, you apply them. At least we all eat. But we should be mindful of what we eat. So healthy eating is the way to go. If you can't do anything at all in terms of how to prevent burnout, at least healthy eating, you should be able to engage in that. Abigail.
Thank you, Doc. This
Yes.
has been very
Okay.
helpful.
Yeah, okay. So if you have any other question you can ask, or your colleagues, if they have questions, the floor is for them. I'm here to address your concerns to the best of my ability.
So I think you can raise your hand.
Please, you can raise your hand and ask your question. Or you can put it in the chat section. We are supposed to be having a very friendly discussion, so I encourage you, to ask your questions. So the person who mentioned the issue of literature review, the PhD public administration student, okay? So one of the things you should start thinking about is one, workshop. Workshop on literature review is something you should be thinking about. Maybe in your university environment, no such workshop is being organized. But are there other institutions that organize workshops on literature review? What's the name of the place? So this institution, for example, they organize workshops on how to review literature. When will that program be done? Make sure you enroll and learn practically how to review literature. So that when you pick a paper, this is what you need to look out for. This is how you have to weave the points, okay? So that you'll be able to get out of that situation. Because if you can't review literature properly, then I don't see how you'll be able to do a very good thesis. Because PhD work hinges on literature review. Because the theories that will drive your arguments, must come from the literature. The theories that will support your research questions must come from literature. Your methodology is informed by the literature review. And so once you have identified literature review as one of the major challenges, there are two things that you have to do. One, workshop, where you'll be taken through practically, not theoretically, practically how to review literature with some examples to show. Two is where you have to seek help, not through workshop, but through some colleagues or seniors in the same university or other universities who can really come down to your level and teach you or train you on how to review literature. So these are some of the two ways by which you can handle that. Reading other papers may not be enough because there's a challenge. You need to attend a workshop where practically that will be demonstrated. Or you seek help from a colleague who is very good at literature review, or a senior colleague, or even a lecturer that you are free with, could walk you through or train you on how to review literature. So any question?
Yes, Doc, my final question.
Yes.
My final question is, if you get to a place of burnout,
Yes.
what do you do? Do you give yourself a break?
Okay, yes. So you are in a state of burnout. It's just like saying that someone is depressed. Okay. What is the way out? So one of the things you can do in the context of academia, remember that, especially when you are writing your thesis, you find yourself in a supervisor-student relationship. Okay, you can't just vanish and say, okay, I've taken a break. You need to have a discussion with your supervisor. Okay, and then be very frank with him or her about your current state so that your supervisor could even suggest some of the things that you have to do. Because when you say you are taking a break, some people will take a break and then they go back. They will not even engage or do what is expected of them to bounce back strongly. You will take a break and then you go home and you are busy working. That will not give you the kind of relaxation that you need to have in order to free yourself psychologically, physically from the challenges that sank you into burnout. And so you have to have a discussion with your supervisor, and then you can have a plan. Okay, you take 1 week or 2 weeks or 1 month leave. Okay, and whilst you are on that leave, these are the things that you should be doing. Because the goal is to get you out of a certain situation. Your supervisor may even recommend or refer you to a specialist who will put you on a certain therapy. Okay, who will put you on a therapy. All are geared towards getting you back, taking you out of a certain situation that is not healthy for your studies. So that is what I would recommend and suggest that you do. Some students vanish into thin air. And so when you do that and you finally resurface, your supervisor feels disrespected. That look, what happened? I couldn't reach out to you. So when you do that, it creates some enmity between you and your supervisor, and that can further aggravate the situation. So Abigail, anytime you find yourself in such a situation, you first have to engage your supervisor. If it is not at the point of you writing dissertation, then you have to engage the head of that department. Okay, so that at least they are aware that you want to take some 2 weeks or 1 month off, to deal with certain aspects of your life which you think are a hindrance to your progress on the program. Thank you once again for your question, Abigail.
Thank you,
Justice.
Yeah.
Yes, Justice. The floor is yours.
Yes. Hello.
Yes, Justice.
Yes, Doc.
Yes.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
I am so grateful on your presentation. You have touched important factors concerning the burnout. In fact, I'm enjoying the presentation. What I missed out is the issues on the consequences of burnout. I didn't hear much on that. And then all the results that answers that have come up in terms of managing burnout, I think they are also on point. But my little suggestion that I will add to that is it
Yeah.
when it comes to managing burnout, I think it's something that we know how to do it very well. But the idea is that we don't actually focus on burning about a lot of things that we do in our normal practices to keep us alive whilst doing anything which is we consider tedious, such as going out for breaks and then breaking your work or your duties into pieces so that you can manage them, or when after breaking them into pieces, you do the easy one first and then the difficult one, you break them and then you do it in your leisure time, or you don't restrict yourself too much under pressure. All these things are some of the things that we do to manage burnout. But this area is a very important point that I want you to clarify. When it comes to, as a student giving a supervisor, two supervisors, and at one point or the other, you find yourself in a situation where your supervisors are not agreeing on a particular issue concerning the work you're doing. At that point, you get torn apart, and that also presents, a burnout situation for you as a student. How do we manage those, burnout? That is what I want you to clarify for me. Thank you very much.
Okay. Thank you so much, Mr. Justice. Thank you. I like your contribution to the discussion, and then also the question that you asked, particularly regarding a situation where there is a conflict regarding your project work between your two supervisors. Now, from practice or standard practice, the principal supervisor is expected to co-own the dissertation with you. Now, in my discussion, I indicated that when it comes to dissertation, it is a student who is supposed to determine the study area or the research area. The supervisors are supposed to help the student to arrive at the final topic in terms of one, is this your topic researchable? Will it make some significant contribution to knowledge? So to the extent that the student will be able to provide some literature to justify, then what it means is that the topic is doable. It will make some substantial contribution to knowledge. Now, once the principal supervisor, who is supposed to co-own the work with the student, approves the topic, then whatever he says is paramount to your progress than the second supervisor. Because if your principal supervisor does not sign your dissertation and the second one signs it, your work will not be examined. Because if your work fails, it is you, the student, that will be blamed first, and secondly, the principal supervisor. And so when you have a challenge where the two supervisors are disagreeing, you usually have to go with the principal supervisor. You usually have to go with the principal supervisor to the extent that what the principal supervisor thinks of your study aligns with your expectations, your thoughts. If you are not able to deal with it from the supervisory level, then the next thing you have to do is to find a way of getting the head of that department, to know of what is happening as far as your project work is concerned. Remember that the work is for you. And what I usually tell students is that when you are writing a declaration statement, you don't say the work is for you and your supervisors. It is purely your work. And so if you foresee that there's conflict or conflicting positions being taken by your 2 supervisors or 3 supervisors, you have to go with your principal if and only if what your principal is saying aligns with your thoughts and expectations. But if both are coming from a perspective that you think do not really align with your expectation, then you have to find a way of discussing that with your head of department or the head of the graduate program so that there can be some kind of solution or whatever to what is currently happening. And here I'll give you my personal example. I was given 2 supervisors. But in Australia, what happens is that almost universities outside, you get a supervisor before you go. And so I got my supervisor before I went. And so when I went, I was made to do 15 minutes oral presentation before the department. And the essence of that 15 minutes oral presentation was to enable them identify a second supervisor for me. A second supervisor whose research area aligns with my research area. So that process went on successfully. A second supervisor was found for me. So I started the work with my principal and my second supervisor. The first time I met my second supervisor, we had discussions. No, I realized no, it was not up to my expectations. So I sought the opinion of my principal supervisor. These were the things I had discussions with my second supervisor. And these were the feedback that I got from her. But I think this is my perspective. This is what I think about the feedback, because we all read, okay, and we all appreciate and know what is happening in the literature. So to cut a long story short, my principal thought that no, what I'm saying is completely correct. And so he told me that look, I am on this program because he agreed to supervise me. So what he says goes. And so since then, I stopped having personal engagement with my second supervisor. So it was my principal who supervised the work throughout, from start to finish, and I completed and graduated. And so on the basis of that, I always advise students, your principal should be your main man. Your principal should be your main man. But ultimately, we want a supervisory team that really acts professionally, respect themselves, and there should be that understanding so that there will not be friction. But when that situation exists, please follow your principal supervisor. Okay, Mr. Justice.
Thank you, Doc.
Yeah.
In a follow-up
Yes.
to the same question,
Yes.
what about a supervisor who's supposed to look through your work and then commend you or disapprove what you have done and give another direction, has already read through the work and then use this red pen to cancel everything from head to toe, and he didn't even explain to you that go and do this and go and do that, and he has given you your work. When you send it back, he does the same thing. When you send it back, he does the same thing. In that case, as a managing burnout, what are some of the things that you can do as a student?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay. Yes. Okay. Thank you. Another great question. I think that my first response to that act by the supervisor is that that is no supervision at all. Because there is no good at all to just be canceling the things without suggested, or letting the student understand why you are canceling those things. That one is no supervision at all. It's actually creating a situation that will frustrate the student. Because at the end of the day, there is no guide at all regarding how to overcome that challenge. So that is no supervision. On the part of the student, if you encounter that situation, and this I always tell my students, if I do something on your work, if you don't understand anything, first come, let's have a discussion before you think of even working on it. In as much as me, I don't cancel students' work without, giving reasons why I've done so. I always tell students that, look, when I give you feedback, if you don't understand anything, I'm available for some form of engagement so that there will be some clarity. And so the student, you can even request. Just send a simple email. Oh, Prof, oh, sir, I've received feedback from you regarding my presentation. But please, I want to come and meet you, then we have some discussion. I need some clarification before I can proceed, to work on it. That can work. But where even that fails, then you have to find out. You see, sometimes students don't do a lot of background check on supervisors. If you do some background check on your supervisor, you will know, how to navigate around that supervisor. Some lecturers in the department will tell you, as for this person, this is how he does his supervision. Okay, and they may even tell you that when he does certain things, this is what you have to do to really get around it. Or even some of the students you have supervised before, if they are around, they will share their experiences with you and tell you how they manage, to get around that supervisor. So I'll recommend first, drop an email and do not work on, comments from your supervisors, particularly those you are not clear about, without seeking their audience so that you have some discussion with that supervisor, so that you'll be on the same page. That way, when you do that and you work on the comments, most likely the feedback will be positive. So that is what I'll recommend to all of you. And thank you so much, Master Justice, for your question.
Doc, I'm so grateful. There are some other questions, but I don't think it falls under this topic that we are all looking at. So I pray that next time, when it's in line with the topic, then we can equally discuss this. I think it would be good for some others to also come up with their questions so that we can all hear. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Yeah.
All right, so our time is fast spent. Thank you very much for coming to the lecture today. Thank you, Doc, also for being here and then teaching us on preventive measures to overcome burnouts in grad school. So I'm going to send the recording of this presentation to your emails, as we always do. So next month, we'll be having our next lecture, which will be the 9th session of Clcd graduate lecture series. It will be on the 24th, on the last Friday of the month. So look out for that. So if there are no more questions, I think we can bring today's lecture to an end. So thank you all for joining. We'll meet next month. Bye.
Bye. Bye.
Yes, maybe you're still there.